Andrew Flint is still missing in action. We'll get him in, but Isolt, uh, we have a couple. We have a couple. So go with your first one, because the floor is all yours.
Story of my life. Andrew has let me down. So my first topic is on Tyson Fury. Again, we're back to him. So in the last week, Tyson has been a busy boy. He has been telling Man United how to play football. He has been announcing less than 2 months after his retirement that he may potentially come out of. And my personal favourite, he appears to have discovered that he is now one of the, I think it's estimated being over 600 people associated with Daniel Kinahan who is not eligible to travel into the United States by process of boxing analysis at who is going to fights where, which trainers are no longer training people in the US, which commentators are not traveling to the US, which journalists are not going. I think we're whittling down that list and we're north of 20 on who we figured out already. But Tyson, it appears, is probably the biggest and most high profile name to discover that he will not be allowed into the US. This comes on the back of reports in the Irish media in particular, who obviously take a very keen interest in it. Nicola Tallant, the Sunday World journalist, was, I think, the first off the mark with this story, that essentially he last Friday discovered he was refused entry to the US, which was actually very interesting because his cousin Nathan Gorman was fighting in Liverpool on the Friday night or Friday night, in the Echo Arena, now called the M&S Bank Arena, I think. But his promoter Frank Warren was obviously very quick to say, we didn't discuss it. I don't know if that's happened. Sure, he was in Liverpool, and you kind of go, well, firstly, you being in Liverpool does not mean you haven't tried to book a flight to the US. I don't know if Frank knows how these things go, but then again, Frank was conspicuously absent from his own fighter, Daniel Dubois' Miami fight the week before, when he fought out there on a Don King card and won a type of world title, if you'll call it that. But Frank wasn't risking his attempts to travel to the US. We also had Matt Macklin right before the Katie Taylor flight turned up to the airport in London, Heathrow, to board a flight for the US, and was told he was on whatever watch list that he could not travel. He obviously would have founded MTK. It's named after Matt, like Mac the Knife was his nickname as a fighter, hence MTK. So obviously the MTK as a brand and its close connections with Kinahan have obviously led to it being disbanded. But what's really interesting about this story is we've not only do we know who appears to not be able to travel to the US, and there's a beautiful photo on screen of the two BFFs who have no connection whatsoever in terms of business. And of course, Daniel has no convictions. Let's just remind everyone of that. But what's really interesting about this is that Tyson Fury owns a property in Florida, where he has spent a lot of time. And it was interesting, maybe about a week after his fight against Dillian White, rather than going to Florida, which seems his typical spot to go immediately post fight. I actually think I tweeted about it at the time. He was actually holidaying in the south of France on a super yacht, which seemed a bit strange. But then again, I went, normally when he fights in the US, so it would be logical for him to go straight to Florida because that's where he has his property. But it will have a huge knock-on impact. If he comes out of retirement, he presumably will not be able to fight in the US. He also would probably have an issue with disposing of his assets in the US. If he's been banned from traveling there, there would probably be a knock-on effect to him raising finances. So let's say if he decides, I'm never going to get to my Florida property, I'd like to sell it, there's another issue. What I find also very interesting in all of this is the fact that Bob Arum, God bless his US self, Bob Arum has literally said he was giving money to Daniel Kinahan. I think he put it at 3 million over Tyson's last three fights prior to the Dillian White fight. Obviously, because Bob is a US citizen and a lawyer, he's not going anywhere, and he's been very outwardly open since the sanctions came in, at least, to say what he had done when, and he can't exactly be thrown out. But it is a really, for boxing, it's now becoming a case of you kind of wish they would organise just the biggest event possible in the US to see who could turn up at this stage, so we can just start going and knowing who's not able to travel. But for Tyson, this is a big body blow, and he's been out on social media in the last 24 and 48 hours with going on a date night, going on a run, doing everything imaginable, but not commenting on the fact that he can no longer go to his Florida home, which I'm sure is a huge disappointment to everyone in Florida.
And look, again, we discussed it very, the top of the show, and with him coming to Manchester United and so on, and now he's a Manchester fan, and you know, this is exactly what sports media do, and media in general. But we're talking about sports media. They're brilliant at it. They're brilliant at it, and we've seen it with the Irish boxing media when sometimes they were giving passes to Irish fighters. You know, Michael Conlan. Oh, he's one of ours. He's a great fighter. Yeah, he's getting paid by a drug dealer.
But then
You know,
they
Andy,
did ban some of the Irish media then as well. So you had guys who literally their career was boxing, writing, and they couldn't go to any fights. And they're like, so what are we meant to do?
yeah, exactly. And I mean, and then worse when you see it when it just accelerated when Andy Lee, they're involved. I'm thinking, I have great time for Andy Lee. I think he was done out of a world title by Julio Cesar Chavez Jr., who was doped up to his eyeballs. Um, and Andy Lee, I remember him afterwards saying, "You can't be that strong naturally," and he said it open. He slammed it. But anyway, Tyson Fury, God knows what's going to happen to him next. We spoke with him last week. I think we're going to end up speaking with him next week as well. He seems to be like a staple for us. But yeah,